Welcome to the Energetic Psyche, hosted by yours truly, Dr. Adrian Campbell. This week for episode 25, I have Dan Bridges, a licensed clinical social worker and U.S. Marine Corps veteran. We'll be chatting about his 17 years in the Marine Corps, how he made the decision to get out in order to take better care of himself, and his journey into his work as a counselor and addiction recovery specialist at Booneville Valley Hope. I hope you enjoy. All right. So welcome to the Energetic Psyche, a podcast hosted by yours truly, Dr. Adrian Campbell. This week for episode 25, I have Dan Bridges, LCSW and U.S. Marine Corps vet. We'll be chatting about his 17 years in the Marine Corps, how he made the decision to get out in order to take better care of himself, and his journey into his work as a counselor and addiction recovery specialist at Booneville Valley Hope. So I wanted to share a little bit about Dan. As mentioned, he's a Marine Corps combat veteran and a licensed clinical social worker. But more importantly, he's a husband, a father, and a grandfather. He currently works at Valley Hope of Booneville, an addiction treatment facility, as the business manager. Dan identifies as someone in long-term recovery and has been working in the substance use disorder treatment field since 2020. Dan was born in British Columbia, Canada, while his father was serving in the U.S. Air Force. He moved a lot before settling in Pettis County, Missouri, when he was in grade school. Dan graduated from Greenridge High School in 1995 and immediately went into the U.S. Marines as an infantryman. I think I'm saying that right. Those simple words get you sometimes. While he deployed multiple times in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom, and other non-combat related deployments. During his 17 years as a Marine, Dan battled alcoholism and had multiple episodes of treatment, his last being in 2010 he has maintained his sobriety since. Upon being honorably discharged from his military service in 2012, Dan began pursuing his educational goals while working for a few different nonprofit human services agencies. He completed his master's in education and psychology in 2017 and his MSW in 2020. In 2016, Dan took up running as a healthy coping skill to maintain his recovery and to deal with mental health issues. Dan has completed more than 20 marathons and 2 ultra marathons and is a certified running coach. He believes that movement can be a key component in one's mental health and encourages others to stay active. Same, Dan. Same. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm really looking forward to this episode and just learning a little bit more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I was thrilled when I saw the prompt on social media, and I said, that this would be a great opportunity to share a little bit.
Awesome. So why don't we start from the beginning? Where'd you come from? How'd you get here?
Okay. Well, like you read in my bio, I was born in British Columbia, Canada. My dad was serving in the Air Force at the time. My whole family really military background. One of my grandfathers was in the U.S. Navy. Another grandfather served in the Marine Corps during World War II, then got out and served in the Army during Korea and stayed in and retired from the Army. And so uncles, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, just the whole gamut. So growing up, I kind of knew where I was headed. And the advice given to me by my father was, check out all 4 branches and find out which one, you think you're going to do best in. But
hang on 1 second. There's 5, just so you know. Coast Guard.
I was wondering if you were going to pick up on it. But, the Coast Guard didn't have a recruiter in Sedalia.
I completely understand. I had to search one out myself in California. So.
Yeah. So at the time, it was traditional thinking of, the 4 branches. Right. And so I went to all 4, even though in my mind, my heart was pretty much set on the Marine Corps. Ever since a young age, I had a couple of uncles that I looked up to, and my grandfather that served in both the Army and the Marine Corps visibly displayed his pride of being a Marine more than the Army, even though he only spent 4 years in the Marine Corps and 16 years in the Army.
He was a Marine.
Yeah. And there was something about that that really struck me.
Yeah.
And so, I followed my father's advice. Now, the Marines in the family, the advice they gave me is don't join the infantry.
Yeah. That's what I hear too from all my friends. Yeah.
They say get a skill. Like one of my uncles was a helicopter mechanic. The other one was like a radar technician. And, everybody's like, learn a skill. So when you get out, you'll have a skill. And I'm like, I'm not going to listen to that. I want to be, like I watching Platoon and Heartbreak Ridge and, all the great war movies and everything. And I said, no, I want to be where the action is. I want to, do something. And so I joined right out of high school. I spent the summer, just working in hay fields before I went to boot camp in the fall. From there, I went to a couple of different duty stations in San Diego. I was first stationed on an aircraft carrier, which was interesting. So the town I grew up in Missouri was actually about 400 people. It's a little town called Green Ridge.
Okay.
And there's about 5,000 people on the aircraft carrier.
Yeah. I grew up in Southern California.
Okay.
And I grew up in Huntington Beach area, and I have a lot of friends who are nuclear Navy because I worked in the nuclear industry. Mm-hmm. So yes, I know about the cities of the aircraft carriers. Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about an adjustment. Yeah. Culture shock there.
Yeah.
And so here I am on this aircraft carrier, and, we'll go out and they call them cutting C squares. We're just trying to get pilots qualified for days at a time. And then, I did my first deployment where we hit places like Australia and Singapore, Hong Kong. Really fun. It was more like a luxury cruise. We got off in Bahrain and did a little bit of guard duty, but nothing real serious. But it was really eye-opening for a young, 18, 19-year-old from a farm town in Missouri to be able to see the world. So that was great.
Something we didn't chat about before this on our call is that so I actually did a Southwest Asia or Southeast Asia trip with a battle group with Marines and the Navy, and we did Singapore and Bali and like all that stuff. So yeah, I've been over there too, and we used to always of course, we're the Coast Guard, so we got teased mercilessly by all the other branches. But the Marines and us always kind of had an understanding. It was just a little different. So we would gang up on the Navy sometimes, which was kind of fun. Yeah. But we always used to joke that our last defense, at least for me, was, you guys just practice all day and float around in the ocean looking cool while we work every day.
Yeah.
So, I mean, because that's the thing is that trip really kind of was a pleasure cruise for us because we just floated around with y'all and didn't really have to do too much. It was kind of awesome.
Yeah, it's a neat experience, one that I'll definitely cherish forever. Just being able to, like I said, see everything and being on 5,000 people that you don't know. And it's crazy. It's a good time. After the aircraft carrier, I went to Naval Air Station, North Island. It was the same base, but it was a different job. So they took us off the carrier, and we were guarding what they called at the time special weapons. And, those have since been moved and everything. But it was just a short stint of guard duty because they just needed somebody to fill in for a few months. So there was a group of us that went over there. From there, I went to Quantico in Virginia, and I was part of the kind of the training cadre. Wasn't like a drill instructor or anything like that. We just demonstrated the different obstacle courses and combat courses and stuff like that. So the Marine officer candidates could see how to properly do it. That was kind of a unique job. I don't know that there's many people that are able to do that. And it's kind of just working out for a job.
You're like, this is how you're a badass, just so you know. You just got to follow me and do what I do. Okay.
Right. from there is when I decided to go on recruiting duty.
Mm-hmm.
And I met my first wife while I was stationed at Quantico. We decided to get married, and we moved to Northeast Iowa. And that's where I was a recruiter.
Mm-hmm.
My boss was about 2 hours away. And I'm very introverted. I'm a very introverted person. And so recruiting duty and I did not get along.
Yeah, that would be a bit of a conflict. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's where, I was a heavy drinker before then, but it never interfered with my job, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I would always drink to intoxication, but it would always be like on the weekends and stuff like that, and as part of a group. In Iowa.
And I would also say that, like, in the military, it's very normalized to be that way. I mean, yeah. I drank more during active duty, and to an extent than I've ever drank in my entire life, and it was normalized. Like, that's just what you did.
Right. So, I mean, when I was with people in Quantico and San Diego, mm-hmm. I wouldn't have been able to pick up on anything different. Right. I wasn't necessarily doing anything out of the norm.
Right.
When I got to Northeast Iowa, and I'm having all this trouble because I pride myself on being a good Marine, mm-hmm. and a solid worker, a solid performer, and I was having, I wasn't. I was mm-hmm. failing to meet the mission. I was struggling to have conversations with teenage kids to see if they wanted to join. And so I started self-medicating.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where it was impacting my job. And that's all I focused on was drinking. I can remember, it's a story I share a lot here when I'm talking to the patient group. I would go to my car in the morning before work, and I would chug 2 beers. The first warm beer that I chugged, I would end up throwing up in the parking lot. And I'm sorry if this is too graphic.
No, you're good.
And the second one I'd be able to keep down, and it would work to keep the tremors at bay.
Oh man. Yeah.
And I would need that little bit to be able to focus on the day and get till, around lunchtime or so. And I would have some more. And then, every night I would drink to intoxication. And now I'm 24, 25, 26, around that age range. My wife is 19 at the time, her first time away from home. And we have a young son, or a newborn.
Okay.
And so, she's probably thinking, we get along great now, but, she's probably thinking, what did I sign up for?
Right.
What is this guy doing?
Mm-hmm.
We ended up, so I went to treatment the first time from Iowa.
Okay.
And I went to treatment.
And now, was that a decision that you made or was made for you?
It was a decision I made.
Okay.
I told my staff NCOIC, staff non-commissioned officer in charge, that I needed to get some help, and they sent me to Great Lakes.
Okay.
Which is a naval training center in around the Chicago area. And so this was my first try at sobriety, and I went there, and I thought I was bought in with it, and I get back, and I'm not able to go to meetings due to the work schedule. And I was in a small town in Iowa, and they only had like noon meetings.
Okay. And this was before like Zoom meetings.
Yeah,
so,
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody had internet on their phone at that. This was around 2001.
Right. Yeah. I was active duty then. So I know, like, we didn't get to send emails from the ship. Like, nothing. People are like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a completely different time.
Yeah.
I had a cell phone, but it was
charged 20 cents per text message.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you didn't text with
long
them.
Distance still applied.
It cost more to text than it did to call somebody.
Right,
so.
Right, yeah.
So we didn't text. And so I get back and, I decide that I can do everything I did before I went to treatment, which is continue to bowl on a bowling league around everybody that's drinking. And it didn't work out for me. Long story short, I probably stayed sober maybe a couple of weeks, maybe a month, and I started drinking again. And this is when I got in trouble. I got a DUI, and I got orders to. This is going to sound like they're rewarding me, but I got orders to Hawaii to an infantry unit.
Okay.
And so, I packed the wife up and my son, and we go out to Hawaii. And within a month of getting there, we deploy.
Right. Like I was like, I know that Hawaii for Marines is not a reward.
Right.
You know what's in Hawaii? Ships.
Yeah. Yeah. It's beautiful when
it's a
you
reward
have
for your
time
wife.
on the island. Yeah. But there wasn't a lot of time there. So we get there and I immediately deploy. And again, I'm drinking again.
Yeah.
And this is when my first wife says, if you don't stop drinking, I'm going to leave. Mm-hmm. And so I did on my own without going to treatment again. And I was able to stay sober for about 5 years.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we get back from that deployment. Relationship is still rocky. I deploy to Afghanistan. I get back. I'm trying to maintain my sobriety without really working a set program, but I'm doing volunteer work, working extra hours at work with like a body composition program, Marines and stuff like that.
Just keeping yourself busy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Away from the guys that get off, hit Liberty and go plow some beers.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do my deployment to Afghanistan. We get back. Almost immediately, we're doing a workup for Iraq. I go to Iraq, and then I get the message that she's going to leave anyway, right? It's not working out. Never there. Story as old as time, right? Especially with service members that
the Dear John letter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I get back from Iraq. This is so now we're in like October of 2006. Mm-hmm. I get back and I finalized a divorce, and I get orders to it's the School of Infantry in Camp Pendleton, California.
Okay.
So I go out there to become a combat instructor.
Okay.
And so I'm doing that, and I get this voice in my head that tells me it wasn't that bad, and I can drink again if I want to.
Mm-hmm.
And
not a good voice.
No, not a good voice.
This was not from above.
No, it was definitely from below, a voice from below, and I'm not great with the time frame, but it felt like it was like a month straight that I was driving home telling myself that I could drink if I wanted to. Mm-hmm. And I ended up doing that. So I have some experience with alcoholism in my family, not personally, but in my family, and a few friends, of course. And from what I've heard is like, this is very common for alcoholics, mm-hmm. is that you go through a phase where you're like, look at me, I've been doing so great. I've mastered this. Yeah. And so like, now like I can do this, I can handle it. And that's often when like relapse occurs. Yeah. If I'm not constantly working a program, and if I'm not constantly aware of where I was and where I am now, kind of in the moment, and a saying people use is play the tape forward.
Okay.
Like I can stop by, the gas station on the way home and pick up a bottle of booze, and it will immediately make me feel better for a few hours.
Right.
Then I have to play the tape forward, and
gotcha.
I lose the job. I'll eventually lose my family. I'll lose my self-respect. I'll lose my dignity. So I got to play that tape forward and see where that's going to, is that hour or two of feeling that euphoria, is it worth it?
Yeah, I like that. That's a nice saying because you can use it in so many situations.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. And, people like me that struggle with substance use disorder, a lot of the times we have a hard time understanding delaying gratification,
right,
and being able to foresee consequences.
And I'm also wondering too, because I know quite a bit about TBI. Don't let me sidetrack you too hard, but
you're good.
Because I know one of the aspects of TBI, traumatic brain injury, is the inability to like link long-term consequence to short-term behaviors. And so I would bet, I haven't looked up the research, but I would bet there's a correlation between people with TBI, even probably just severe concussions that haven't been diagnosed with TBI, and substance use disorders.
Yeah, I'm with you. I haven't done the research on that yet, but there's definitely some similarities there between those two demographics. So I'm sure that there's going to be some overlap there. So
playing the tape forward. You had been sober. You had the voice in your head that's like, dude, you're good. You could totally have one beer.
Yeah. So I cave in and I start drinking again. And so this is 2007, and it seems like I stayed drunk until 2010. But I end up getting orders away from SOI, School of Infantry. I completed my tour there, and I go to 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines out in 29 Palms.
Okay.
And again, as soon as I show up, they're getting ready to go to Afghanistan. And so I'm about a month away from the deployment in the workup, and I just kind of get thrown into the mix. And lo and behold, I get another driving while intoxicated on base this time.
Man, yeah.
Yeah. That was not well received. I'm a staff NCO at this time. I'm an E6, and higher expectations, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And I knew this.
Right. I mean, consciously, these things, but like addiction doesn't pay attention to that kind of stuff. Like, I mean, I know that much.
Yeah.
And so you were an E6 with how many years in?
At this time, I probably have around 15 years.
Okay. All right. And this is your second DUI?
It's what?
This was your second DUI?
The second DUI that they knew about.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
So I did get another one, the first one, but I didn't get any treatment for it. When I got back off that first deployment while I was on the USS Constellation, I got that here in Missouri, and nobody found out about it. And, at the time I chalked it up to being a 20-year-old. A lot of people had them. It was back in the 90s.
Right. It was different. It was a different culture then.
And it was wrong.
Especially in Missouri.
It was more like a speeding ticket, really. I mean, the feeling. I'm not trying to justify it. And so, I never reported it to anybody. Nobody ever found out.
Because back then there was no electronic communication between DMVs and law enforcement agencies. Yeah.
Yeah, it was, just one of those things. Whoops, I won't do that again.
Right.
So, third DUI on base, and I end up because it was the second one that they knew about. They said, "Well, we're going to discharge you." And I said, "Well, I want to at least, I want to get treatment. I want to get better, because for a long time." Since I was at Camp Pendleton and then I took 29 Palms, I knew deep down inside, like, I'm not living up to my own expectations of myself.
Yeah.
I think I should be up here and I'm living down here. Being dishonest with my command. I'm being dishonest with the people that love me. And the only coping skill I had was to drink more.
Yeah.
And it was the cycle that just fueled the shame and the guilt. Every night I would go home, I would begin to drink, I would feel miserable, and I'd have to drink more, wake up in the morning ashamed and not knowing, and it seems so ridiculous not knowing how to get out of that cycle, right? Like there's people watching right now that are saying, well, just stop drinking.
See, but me, I'm like, no, like it totally makes sense because that's, especially if you haven't been taught the skills, which is like so much of what I think you and I both do is, you know, there's recovery and the reactive skill building. I focus a lot on like proactive skill building so that before you even get into these like really terrible situations, hopefully you have those skills, you know, and I think we're doing better as parents and teaching our kids how to be with their emotions and process thought. But like when you and I were growing up, that wasn't really a thing. So you didn't have the skills.
No, I definitely did not have the skills. I didn't have a support network that I felt like I could talk to. And, you know, as ridiculous as it sounds, I didn't know.
Well, and I'm sure being in the Marine Corps didn't help because it's not like you guys are touchy-feely, huggy types, you know? Like, don't get me wrong. I love me some Marines. I got some of my best friends are Marines, and it's the passion, I think, that links us together because there is you gotta for what you do, right? But there is a bravado involved as well. And so, you know, like in the military, weakness or pain is weakness leaving the body. And it's all about push through, find a way, make it happen. So
you kind of have to have this invincible attitude, especially when you're doing those multiple combat deployments and, you know, putting yourself in harm's way multiple times. You just got to
just make it happen.
Yeah.
Figure it out. And so like when you're in that culture, on top of just being human that doesn't have the skills, it's not really like the most supportive for figuring out other ways of coping, especially, like I said, the drinking environment in the military is kind of nuts.
Yeah. I talked to some people that are still kind of still active duty and everything, and I think it's getting better.
I think so too.
Or maybe it's just I didn't seek out that culture enough when I was in.
Maybe. You know, I will say though, because like I served 6 years active duty, 5 of them on a ship, traveled all over the world, right? Not what usually people think of in the Coast Guard. But when we had port calls, I remember there would always be 1 or 2 people that I knew, and we weren't friends because we didn't go drinking together, but I knew them. Our ships were much smaller, 180 people, right? I knew everybody. But they would stay back because they didn't drink. And for them, like that was the choice they had to make. So it wasn't just about like when you gave up going out and drinking, like you also gave up part of your community.
Yeah.
And I think now like civilian culture is changing when it comes to drinking as well. Like mocktails, they have mocktails in several bars, right? So you can still participate with your friends in your community. And I think a lot of that is transferring over into the military because, well, more people are being honest and sharing their stories, and the internet helps us spread information. So I think it is getting better.
Yeah, I hope so for sure. Because I know that there's still a lot of trauma that goes on, and you know the alcohol is not the best way to solve that. So you know, for whatever that's worth. But so I went to we called it a CSAC back then, a Command Substance Abuse Counseling Center.
Okay.
And I talked to was a Navy lieutenant was the doctor in charge, and I said, you know, I just want a chance at treatment, and I wanted to be able to finish out my enlistment. And so I don't know, you know, he had to talk to my colonel and everything, get everything figured out, and they ended up sending me to treatment, and they gave me the opportunity to finish out my tour. And so I was able to go over and meet up with my unit in Afghanistan as a combat replacement. Somebody another staff sergeant got injured, so I went over there and replaced him. And then when I get back, we immediately started started another workup for another deployment to Afghanistan. And they asked me if I would extend for it. And they said, if you extend, we'll likely recommend you for reenlistment and you can hit your 20.
Right.
And I said, well, that sounds fine. I can do that. And so I extend. And so this deployment would have been from fall 2011 to spring 2012.
Okay.
And we get just past Christmas, just in 2012, and they call me in and say, we're not going to recommend you for reenlistment because everything's starting to die down and the Marine Corps is cutting their troop strength.
Right. We just don't need you, but thanks anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, it was a kick in the teeth, but at the same time, I set the table for that to happen. Yeah. I have the most responsibility in that. But what it did do is make me scramble, because here we are. My contract was up in July.
Okay.
And so I have 7 months. We're going to get back. And so
you were still deployed when they told you this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
I was still over there.
Oh my goodness.
And so immediately I start thinking, all right, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
I got to get a house in Missouri, this, that, and the other. I'm communicating with I've gotten married again. In between that time, I was in my active addiction when I married my wife, my current wife. But quickly after that is when I found recovery. Okay. So it was kind of a whirlwind thing. We're still together. We just celebrated 14 years. So,
oh my gosh, congratulations.
Yeah. We've been doing great. But, I'm communicating with her. We got to move all the way back to Missouri. She had just moved from Missouri to California to be with me. And I start applying to schools and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea. I knew that when I went to treatment, I wanted to be a counselor. And we hear this a lot. Now that I'm a counselor, I hear it a lot too. But I said, well, I'm an infantry Marine. I have no other skills. But I think what I can do is take my story and help other people. Mm-hmm. And so I started, I applied to a community college. I said, I don't know what degree I need for this. It was overwhelming too. And it still is. If I go to the credentialing board website, it's very confusing. I didn't know whether I needed to get a degree in psychology, a degree in social work, a degree, and then there's counseling psychology and clinical psychology. Right. And I'm in Afghanistan on a computer and there's nobody to explain this to me.
Yeah. And
so I'm like, well, I'll just start off with a community college and I'll take it one little chunk at a time. I'll start getting my, I had a hodgepodge of credits anyway from different, different times in my life. I would take a course here, take a course there.
Yeah.
And so, I had like 20 different colleges on my transcript.
Mine were similar. Yeah. When I got out. Yeah.
And so when we got back to Missouri, we bought a house. I finished up my degree. While I was doing that, I was working, part-time for Boys and Girls Club, substitute teacher, part-time night security guard, doing whatever I could.
Right.
I fell into after I got my bachelor's, I fell into a position with a place called Center for Human Services.
Okay.
And we were working with adults with disabilities and helping them find jobs out in their communities and everything. And I loved it. I really did. I stayed there for about 5 years. And then, one day it just clicked. I'm like, I got sidetracked. I want to work in the addiction treatment field. I need to get back on course. And I was working with just a bachelor's degree. And in Missouri, I don't know how much you know about the credentialing, but I could be a credentialed substance abuse counselor with just a bachelor's degree.
Okay.
But I wanted my master's.
Yeah.
And so I went and I got a master's. Thank God for the GI Bill.
Yeah. No kidding. I used it as well. Yeah.
The first master's I got was from Mizzou, and it was a 30-hour psychology, master's in psychology.
Okay.
And about halfway through it, I realized, again, because this is all online and nobody's communicating, 30 hours will not get you a license.
Right. That's
So
true. Yeah.
I'm like, what am I doing with this? This is, I mean, it's good information, but it's not going to help me progress in my career at all.
Right.
And so I finished that, and I had to change gears and get another master's in social work, which opens up a lot of different doors for me.
Well, yeah. I mean, so my PhD is not clinical. And I knew that going in. I was totally happy with it. I was already a coach. I've been a coach since 2014. So I was good. I was like, I don't want to be a therapist. And then once I finished my program and got my PhD, I was like, oh, maybe I do want to be a therapist. Damn it. And I started looking at, I had to get another master's degree because this one wouldn't work. And everyone's like, how can you have a PhD in psychology and not become a counselor? And I chose not to go down that road because I was like, another 2 to 3 years of school, another 60 plus grand to do it.
Yeah.
And I had used all my veterans benefits. And so I was like, yeah, I'm good being a coach. I'm good.
Yeah. I was able to get a associate's, a bachelor's, and 2 masters with the GI Bill. And
you have skills. Like,
yeah,
you did that, but well done.
Yeah, I think I took $1,000 student loan to finish my second master's.
Gotcha.
But I mean,
yeah, nicely done.
Yeah.
Are you sure you don't want to be an educational counselor?
I was happy about that.
Yeah,
I really worked that program. But after I got my social work degree, I started working as a medical social worker in Sedalia.
What does that mean? Medical social worker.
So you're working at a hospital.
Oh, okay.
And so I was helping people get into like nursing homes or skilled nursing facilities. But the entire time, my coworkers understood that I was waiting for a opportunity in the substance abuse field. And one of my coworkers, Grace, actually cut an ad out from a newspaper and for Valley Hope. And I said, all right, I'll look into this. And I filled out the application and everything. And this place has been just phenomenal for me. You've probably heard the phrase, bloom where you're planted.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I started off here as a residential counselor and then became an admission counselor. I was the admission manager for several years or 2 years. And then I just recently became the business manager. And it really is, and I'm not trying to be quaint or anything, but it really is like a family here.
Oh, that's nice.
At times, I won't say argue, but we have differences of opinions, especially, with the leadership. We might have a different way of doing something, but we're comfortable enough with one another where we can talk about it.
And that's so healthy. It's so much healthier than like a dictatorship or, a straight hierarchy in a business. Yeah.
Yeah. Because believe it or not, I'm not always right. So
the Marine Corps didn't teach you that, though.
No, they didn't. My wife did. My current wife. Well, both of them. Both my ex-wife and my current wife helped teach me that. But, we can have a difference of opinion. We can talk about it like adults, and we can move forward in whatever's the best interest of the patients. So
that's awesome. So what kind of programs do you have at Valley Hope?
So we have a residential program that lasts up to 45 days.
Okay.
And then we have a IOP program, which is intensive outpatient. and that's 4 days a week for 3 hours each session, and that's offered via Zoom.
Oh, okay.
That way, and it's only for people that reside in the state of Missouri, but you can be anywhere in the state of Missouri. You don't have to drive every day to Booneville for 3 hours and then drive home. So that's good. And then we have something we call continuing care, which is kind of like an extension of the IOP, only it is 1 hour a week.
Okay.
So a progression of treatment might look like residential for 45 days.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're here at our facility 24 hours a day, you're getting the classes, you're getting the groups. When you discharge, you enroll into the intensive outpatient program. Mm-hmm. You do that for 36 sessions, 9 weeks of that, and then you're ready to step down to the continuing care.
Okay.
Not everybody does it that way. Sometimes people will leave and maybe find an AA group or a smart recovery group, celebrate recovery, something that meets their needs. But they're always welcome to, come back and maybe look into our program. And, we love our alumni here. Our alumni are our biggest referral source. Mm-hmm. Every month we celebrate our alumni. So, we want to make them feel like they're part of the family as well.
That's awesome. So do you guys take insurance?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, we take most major insurances. So Valley Hope's not in network. Our Valley Hope is not in network with like Missouri Medicaid or Medicare. And so we take self-pay or insurance, major insurances. And a lot of them can come through the marketplace. You just have to make sure that it has substance abuse or mental health treatment on the plan.
Gotcha. Okay. And then since we're in this space, what are some resources, like if somebody was dealing with addiction or someone they loved was dealing with addiction, what are some resources you could recommend?
So if you have a loved one that's dealing with, let's say, a substance use disorder, I usually recommend to people that they go to like an Al-Anon.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Or a Nar-Anon.
What's the second one?
Nar-Anon, Narcotics Anonymous.
Got it. Okay.
And so that helps teach like boundaries and that you're not responsible for your husband, wife, brother, sister, daughter, father's addiction.
And they can find these by just looking online, right?
Yeah. You can Google it and they'll show you the meetings. They have online meetings now too. For people that are looking for treatment for their loved one or for themselves, of course, I recommend Valley Hope. I think we're, one of the finer addiction treatment facilities, but anywhere that you can get in, people can find a path to recovery if they're looking for it. Now, I will say, with Valley Hope, we can get people in usually the same day or within 24 hours, we can admit people.
Nice.
And there are other facilities that have a waiting list.
Mm-hmm. So, okay. And that's important because I think making that decision can be really difficult. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there's a short time window.
Very small windows.
Yeah. So that's nice. Well, cool. Okay. And so I know that in addition to the programs you've gone through, you've also, for your own recovery, how many years have you been sober now?
14.
Well done. Well done. And so in addition to like meetings or whatever, how do you manage your own recovery?
So like you mentioned a little bit in the introduction, I like to run. I'm just now starting to get a little bit more into like some weightlifting type stuff, hiking, those sorts of things, anything outside really. I like, but so I started with the running. I got out of the Marine Corps and I talked a little bit about the educational journey. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But, in the Marine Corps, they make you run. They make you stay in shape. Yeah. And I wasn't. I was sitting on a couch. I was eating, maybe one could say poor food choices. Yeah. And I was very inactive. And I could feel the stress kind of building up.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you felt this, but when I took the uniform off, I lost a sense of belonging.
Yeah.
And I lost a little bit of, the pride and a sense of, I already said belonging, but like I didn't know what I was doing with my life, a sense of purpose.
Yeah. Well, and for me, it was also a sense of self,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, who am I without this uniform anymore?
Yeah.
Even though, I mean, I only did 6 years active, right? But we were deployed all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Our deployment schedules are different. So on ship, my first ship, we were out for 3 months, in for 2. Second ship, we were out 2, in 2. So it was just, we were constantly gone, and I was always in that uniform. So yeah, taking it off and figuring, I used to say one of the hardest decisions I had to make when I got out is what to put on in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like
people think that's ridiculous, but
right. I had to be a girl too, like earrings, jewelry. Yeah. I had to be like pretty. I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah,
it was the best.
It can be overwhelming. And so I just remember, and there's a lot of different factors that go into it. There's a lot of different things going on in my mind, but I can remember specifically one day just looking at myself in the mirror after taking a shower and not liking what I saw. And I said, I got to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And I found, so it was more of like a physical catalyst.
Mm-hmm.
And I went out and I started running, and I didn't know what I was doing. And so, I knew how to run, but I didn't know anything about nutrition or anything like that. So I was just running and eating salads. Running and eating salads.
That'll get you skinny quick.
Yeah. And what I noticed was the mental health benefits were more significant than the physical.
Yeah.
I was feeling better about myself. And it wasn't because of a number on the scale or how I looked in the mirror. I just felt better.
Right.
And so I continued on, and that's kind of what led me to become like a certified running coach and everything, because I'm like, well, this is working for me. It's probably working for other people. Started joining Facebook groups and everything, and seeing that my story wasn't as unique as I thought it would be, in a good way, right?
Yeah.
Lots of communities out there, lots of people that are finding this, lots of people in recovery that are talking about the benefits of exercise and nutrition and everything like that. And so, when I first started, I told everybody that would listen, I'm not running more than a 5K. I'm not going to do more than 3 miles. And then that slowly grew and grew and grew. And I found a organization, they're not active anymore, but it was called Run Well.
Okay.
And they used exercise and fitness as a way to help raise funds for different treatment facilities.
Oh, wow. Nice.
And so I got involved with them, and I ended up signing up for the New York Marathon, which was my first marathon.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was able to raise funds for the Pettis County Juvenile Drug Court.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And so I think I raised maybe $5,000 the first year, maybe $4,000 the second year. But I was able to do that. And after that first marathon, most people get back to their hotel after their first marathon and like, that was stupid. I'm never doing that again.
I think I said that at mile 4 in my first half marathon.
There you go.
But am I still not there yet?
Yeah. And it was just such an amazing experience that I got back to the hotel and I immediately signed up for the Chicago Marathon.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
And I haven't really looked back since. I mean, I've been going at it. Like you said, I've ran over 20. I got to do a 50 miler last year that we
ran.
That's
the ultra marathons, right?
Yeah. And we did that to raise money for Valley Hope. Okay. And we originally called it the Run for Hope. We did the entire Katy Trail as like a relay.
Okay.
A few years back.
I think I remember hearing about that. I've done water stations at a few marathons with Team RWB. It's been a few years, but yeah.
Yeah, we did that. And the Run for Hope continued. Last year, we did it as a 50 miler where it was just a handful of us. Didn't really get the traction we wanted. And this year, we're doing the Run for Hope here in Booneville, but it's only going to be a 5K.
Okay.
And we're hoping that will elicit a lot more participation.
Okay.
And so that's in September in support of National Recovery Month. And we call it the Run for Hope Memorial Ribbon Run.
Okay.
So here at Booneville, what we do is we have these cups that our patients hang up, and they get to paint them however they want and really let their personalities show. And they hang them up, and then in a year they come back and they tell the patient group how they stayed sober, and they pick up their cup. Yeah. It stems from when we were first started in Norton, Kansas. The patients would leave their coffee cup on the mantle, and they'd come back in a year. And so we do a little bit of a celebration and everything. And unfortunately, not everybody makes it back. Yeah. And when we hear of somebody that didn't make it back, we hang their cup with a black ribbon.
Gotcha.
And sometimes we hang the cup with a green ribbon if they die in their recovery. Mm. And so the Memorial Ribbon Run is a testament to those that are no longer with us, but it's also going to celebrate those that are still in recovery.
Obviously, it's touching my heart.
Yeah, we're hoping for a great turnout. We got signs that loved ones can get to honor their person in recovery or person that they've lost along the way. We want people to come out, and even if they don't want to run or walk it, they can just cheer for people.
Right.
Reached out to different organizations that want to set up tables so people can learn more about the resources that are available.
Well, that's awesome. So if somebody wanted to sign up for this run or learn more about it, what website should they go to?
Well, they can go to the Booneville Valley Hope Facebook page.
Okay.
And there's links on there, or they can go to the Run for Hope Memorial Ribbon Run page.
Okay. And I'll make sure and put the links with this video. So anyone that's interested, the links will be there for that as well.
That'd be great.
Freaking awesome, man. That's really cool. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm working on a book. It's related to my dissertation for my PhD, which is all about military transition. And one of the sections I was just talking to my roommate about the other day is physical fitness, right? Because the body is the container for any kind of psychic, and not like psychic woo-woo psychic, but mental activity that needs to take place. And when we don't maintain the health of our container, any kind of mental activity, mental work, any, struggles you go through become more difficult because your physical body needs to be able to hold all of that. Yeah. And my roommate's a veteran as well, Army veteran. And we were talking about how, when you first transition out, at least for me, and I think for others as well, we sit on our asses and we eat junk food because we can. Yeah. Because we're allowed for the first time in however long to make our own choices about what we're doing with our lives, right? And I know, especially for me, because I deployed so much, when I was home, I ate like crap because when I was gone, all I had was crap to eat, right? Yeah. But a completely different variety.
Right.
And so I got out right off a deployment schedule and went right into eating the junk that I normally ate at home. I didn't take care of myself. I gained 30 pounds. And looking back, I remember, and I've heard it so many times over the years, it's important to have a schedule when you get out, and it's important to exercise and blah, blah, blah. And when I was in, I exercised 2 hours a day. And so when I got out, I was like, yeah, no.
Right.
I'm not going to do that.
You don't control me anymore.
Right. Exactly. But I wish someone had told me why. Right. it's not just like make sure and have a schedule. It's no, create structure and stability for yourself because what you're going to go through is hard. And if you can provide structure and stability and a healthy body, it's going to make the mental stuff that you have to struggle with a lot easier to deal with. Absolutely. And like, I just wish that somebody had shared that, right? Which, well, it's I'm writing a book. But this is because I've heard this same story so many times from so many of us that we get out, gain a bunch of weight. We're not taking care of ourselves. And, you know, I don't know what the percentage is, but not all of us figure it out.
No.
You know, it's unfortunate. And I think our service is hard enough on our bodies, right? I mean, I'm 44 and I'm pretty sure my body's 75.
Yeah.
Our service is hard enough on our bodies. And then by gaining weight and eating crap and, you know, maybe having a substance abuse disorder, something like that, we have a much earlier mortality rate than civilians. Yeah. And all of that stuff contributes, you know? So it's in our best interest to take as good of care of us as we can with what's left after our military service. Right. Because veterans, I mean, we have like amazing skill sets to offer the world. We can move mountains like we literally do in some instances, right?
Absolutely.
And the world needs us. And I think that when we first get out, we can forget about that. And we can feel like we're no longer part of something and that we don't matter, but we do. So, yeah. Wow, I just went off on a whole soapbox thing there.
Beautifully said, though. Beautifully said.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Well, Dan, I appreciate you being here with us today so much and for your vulnerability and sharing your story. And, you know, I have no doubt that the work that you're doing in the world is helping people. And I'm sure that you can feel that as well. I mean, in the job you're in, you know, probably get some pretty consistent feedback, which is nice, that you have that opportunity. So I'm happy for you to be in that space. And what I ask everybody towards the end of the show is if there was one thing you wanted to share with everyone or something you wanted everyone to know, what would that be?
Well, I've been thinking about this. And it's, you know, probably the same thing that I tell a lot of people that, you know, you're worth recovery. If you're facing a struggle right now, you're worth it. Seek help. Give us a call, give a loved one a call, go to a meeting, do something because you're valuable. There's people out there that love you.
Yep, absolutely. 100% agree. Yeah, I'll just stop there. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Dan. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you being here. So now it's time to say goodbye.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on the Energetic Psyche, a weekly podcast that live streams every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. I hope to see you again in the future, and I hope you have a great week. Take care.